Most people think they know the Watts case. Perfect family, cheating husband, cold-blooded murder. Case closed, right? Wrong. What if I told you that the Watts family was in a deep financial crisis? It started 3 years earlier in a bankruptcy courtroom, with less than $10 in their savings accounts, and it ended with a $1,500 lawsuit they couldn't afford to face. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching this from. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you scrolled through Shanann Watts' social media in early 2018, you saw a life rendered in high definition. The Lexus parked in the driveway, smiling children dressed in boutique clothing, videos of tropical vacations, and enthusiastic updates about a thriving business that promised financial freedom. It was a perfectly staged window into a life of abundance. The house at 25 Saratoga Trail stood as a monument to the American dream. 5 bedrooms, manicured lawn, a massive beige structure dominating the suburban block in Frederick, Colorado. But if you could have looked past the filters and peeled back the siding of that house, you would have found a foundation rotting away. While the public saw a family on the rise, forensic accountants later discovered a household drowning in debt. The reality wasn't recorded in likes or shares, but in overdue notices and a bank account that once contained just $9.51. This is the story of how a desperate need to maintain an image of wealth created a pressure cooker that exploded into one of the most horrific crimes in recent memory. June 5, 2015. Chris and Shanann Watts stood in a Denver courtroom filing for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. They were drowning in $70,000 of debt, credit cards maxed out, medical bills stacking, student loans they'd never be able to pay. But here's the part that should make your stomach drop. Their 2 savings accounts contained $3.51 in one, $6 in the other. Total savings, $9.51. They owned a $400,000 house, drove nice cars, posted vacation photos from tropical beaches, and they had less than $10 saved. The bankruptcy documents spell out exactly how they got there. Their mortgage alone was nearly $3,000 every month. Car payments were $600 before they bought groceries. Before utilities or insurance or gas, $3,600 of their income was already gone. Chris was making about $61,000 a year, working at Anadarko Petroleum. Shanann was earning roughly $18 an hour at Children's Hospital, Colorado. Combined income in 2014 was around $90,000. Not terrible on paper, but the math didn't work. It had never worked. They were living a lifestyle that required twice what they actually made. In August 2015, a federal judge granted them bankruptcy protection, wiped away most of that $70,000 debt. It was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to downsize, move into something they could actually afford, build real stability for their 2 little girls. Instead, they stayed in the big house on Saratoga Trail and doubled down on the performance of success, because Shanann had found a new opportunity, a company called Lavelle, selling something called Thrive, a lifestyle experience that promised financial freedom to anyone willing to work hard enough. It was a multi-level marketing company, and it was about to make everything worse. Here's how the trap worked. To sell the Thrive lifestyle, Shanann had to embody success. She had to look wealthy to convince other people they could become wealthy too. The business model required her to spend money to make money, or more accurately, to spend money to look like she was making money. Take the Lexus. That white luxury SUV parked on the driveway wasn't actually theirs. Lavelle provided a monthly car bonus to top performers, a stipend to cover the lease on a luxury vehicle. It looked impressive in photos. It signaled achievement. But the fine print was brutal. The lease stayed in Shanann's name. If her sales dipped even slightly in a single month, the bonus disappeared. She was responsible for that lease payment whether Lavelle paid it or not. So every month became a race. Hit quota or lose the car. That's not a bonus. That's a hostage situation. The vacations worked the same way. Shanann posted photos from San Diego, Punta Cana, Toronto, New Orleans, 6 paid trips in 2 years. Free vacations from Lavelle for being a high achiever. But most people don't know how MLM free trips actually work. The company covers the hotel, maybe some meals, but participants pay their own airfare, their own incidentals, their own drinks and entertainment. Those free vacations often cost thousands of dollars, and they had to go, because not going meant looking unsuccessful, and looking unsuccessful meant losing recruits. Losing recruits meant losing income. Losing income meant losing the car bonus. It was a spiral with no bottom. By 2018, Chris and Shanann weren't just broke. They were trapped in a system that required them to live a fake lifestyle they couldn't afford. Chris was still making around $60,000 a year. That's roughly $5,000 per month after taxes. The mortgage alone was $3,000. 60% of his entire paycheck was gone before they touched anything else. Then came daycare, $500 per week. $2,000 a month. That's another private school mortgage just for childcare. Add the car payments, insurance, utilities, cell phones, medical expenses. The lifestyle Shanann needed to maintain for her business, the fixed costs of their life exceeded Chris's entire take-home pay. They were relying completely on Shannon's MLM commissions to bridge the gap. But MLM income is variable, unpredictable. One bad month and everything collapses. If you're still watching, please hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel grow. By March 2018, they had fallen 3 months behind on their mortgage payments. That's $9,000 in back payments they owed. $9,000 they didn't have. Chris did the only thing he could think of. He borrowed from his 401k retirement account to catch up. Your 401k is supposed to be untouchable. The last line of defense. When you're rating your retirement to pay current bills, you're not managing money anymore. You're drowning. And then in the summer of 2018, something happened that made everything exponentially worse. Their homeowners association filed a lawsuit against them for $1,533.80 in unpaid HOA dues. The court date was set for August 24, 2018. Let me give you that date again. August 24th. Shanann was murdered on August 13th. 11 days before Chris would have had to stand in court and publicly admit he couldn't pay $1,500. Think about what that HOA lawsuit represented. The original bankruptcy filing listed their HOA fees at $44 per month. By August 2018, they owed almost $1,500, which means they hadn't paid that $44 monthly fee for nearly 3 years. But the lawsuit wasn't just about money. It was about exposure. For 3 years since the bankruptcy, Chris and Shanann had maintained the facade. The big house, the Lexus, the perfect family on Facebook. Nobody knew they were broke. Chris's coworker and mistress, Nicole Kessinger, had no idea he was in financial trouble. She saw him as a guy stuck in a bad marriage, ready for a fresh start. She didn't know he was drowning in debt, but a court appearance on August 24th would shatter everything. Court records are public. A judgment becomes part of your permanent record. His co-workers would find out. His mistress would find out. Everyone would know that the nice guy with the big house and the luxury car couldn't afford a $1,500 bill. The walls were closing in. While Chris was having his affair with Nicole Kessinger that summer, fantasizing about a simplified life of freedom, the financial reality was collapsing around him. Kessinger later told police that Chris dragged his feet about selling the house. But it wasn't Chris dragging his feet, it was Shanann. And there was a reason for that. They couldn't sell the house. They were underwater on the mortgage. They owed more than the house was worth, and there was something else. An oil battery was being constructed directly across the road from their home. Chris knew exactly what that meant. Oil and gas operations affect property values. Who wants to live across from an industrial drilling site? The house they bought for nearly $400,000 would be worth significantly less with that operation running 24 hours a day across the street. Selling would mean taking a massive loss, exposing all their debt, admitting the bankruptcy hadn't fixed anything, and Chris was thinking about divorce, but divorce would have been a financial nuclear event. In Colorado, the court would calculate alimony and child support for 3 children. They would take a massive percentage of his $60,000 salary. He'd be left with almost nothing. The house would be sold, probably at a loss. His credit would be destroyed again. He was looking at a future as a 33-year-old divorced father living in a basement apartment. Drowning in debt, spending weekends managing custody exchanges, his paycheck garnished down to bare survival money, his credit ruined for the second time, and his mistress. She'd be gone the moment she saw the real financial situation. This wasn't the fresh start he'd promised himself. And somewhere in his mind, in the cold logic that took over, his family stopped being people he loved. They became financial obstacles, blocking his path to a new life. On August 13, 2018, Shannon returned home from a business trip around 2 in the morning. Her friend Nicole Atkinson dropped her off at the house on Saratoga Trail. Chris was there waiting. Bella and Celeste were asleep upstairs. By 5:30 that morning, Shannon was dead. Chris loaded her body into his truck. He drove to the Anadarko work site where he'd spent years as an operator. He buried Shannon in a shallow grave. Bella had to watch her mother's dead body. And then he did something almost impossible to comprehend. He forced his daughter's bodies into crude oil tanks. The opening was only 8 inches in diameter. He had to push them through. Their small bodies were submerged in oil for days before investigators found them. By the time their bodies were recovered on August 16th, Chris had already given television interviews, standing on his front porch, pleading for their safe return, talking about how much he missed them, how he just wanted them home. He was arrested that same day, initially charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of tampering with a deceased body. By August 21st, the charges expanded. 5 counts of first-degree murder, including special counts for children under 12. Unlawful termination of pregnancy for killing Shannon's unborn son. 9 criminal charges total. On November 6, 2018, Chris Watts pleaded guilty to everything. Shannon's family requested the death penalty not be sought. They didn't want another killing. On November 19th, Judge Marcelo Kopkow sentenced Chris Watts to 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole. 48 additional years for terminating Shannon's pregnancy. 36 years for tampering with the bodies. He would never walk free again. And here's what's haunting about the financial motive. The murders didn't solve anything. They cemented the problem in the most permanent way possible. The house on Saratoga Trail became a crime scene, then a dark tourist attraction. It couldn't be sold through normal channels because of the notoriety. And because it went into foreclosure, the bank eventually took the house and sold it at auction. Whatever money it brought went to satisfy the debts Chris had tried so desperately to outrun. Shannon's parents, Frank and Sandra Zuchek, filed a wrongful death lawsuit on November 5, 2019. Chris agreed to a $6 million judgment. $1 million for each death, $3 million for grief, pain, suffering, and emotional distress. He never fought it. It was symbolic, ensuring he could never profit from his crimes. He can never sell his story, never access any assets. The Slayer statute made sure of that, a law that prevents murderers from inheriting from their victims or benefiting financially from their crimes. The insurance policies Chris might have thought about, blocked, he gets nothing. The financial freedom he murdered for was replaced by absolute restriction. He spends 23 hours a day in a cell at Dodge Correctional Institution in Wisconsin. Maximum security. Protective custody because other inmates want him dead. The state controls every aspect of his existence now. The escape he killed for doesn't exist. So here's what we need to talk about, the bigger picture that nobody wants to face. The Watts family sacrificed actual security for the projection of a perfect life. They built a fragile existence on a foundation of debt and denial. And when it became too heavy, when the facade was about to crack, the result was unspeakable horror. Nobody is saying debt causes murder. That's not the point. Millions of families struggle with money and never hurt anyone. But this case forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. How much of the pressure that led to that night in August was born from the desperate, suffocating need to maintain a lie that had become too expensive to keep up? We live in a culture that rewards the appearance of success over actual stability. Social media turned life into a performance. Everyone curating their highlight reel, performing wealth and happiness and perfection. Multi-level marketing companies weaponize this. They require participants to fake it till they make it, to spend money they don't have to recruit others into the same trap. And the pressure to keep up appearances can become crushing. The Watts family is an extreme example, the worst-case scenario. But the system that trapped them is everywhere. How many families right now are living in houses they can't afford, driving cars they're one paycheck away from losing, performing success on social media while drowning in debt behind closed doors? Chris Watts is a monster. Nothing excuses what he did. No amount of debt or pressure justifies strangling your pregnant wife, smothering your daughters. But understanding the financial trap helps us see how pressure warps thinking, how desperation makes terrible solutions seem viable. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't a person. It's the system that traps them, the culture that demands we perform success we don't actually have. The financial structures that punish honesty and reward the appearance of wealth. Shanann Watts deserved better. She deserved a partner who chose divorce over murder. She deserved to raise her children. She deserved to meet her son. Bella and Celeste deserved to grow up, to have their whole lives ahead of them. Baby Nico deserved to be born. Their deaths weren't caused by debt. They were caused by Chris Watts' choice to murder rather than face consequences. But the debt was the pressure, the trap that created the desperation in his mind. The house at Saratoga Trail still stands. It's been sold. New owners live there now. The Lexus has been repossessed. The Facebook posts documenting the perfect life have been archived as evidence of tragedy. What remains is a cautionary tale about American consumer culture, about the pressure to perform success, about the trap of living beyond your means, and about what can happen when the gap between image and reality becomes too wide to bridge. If this deep dive into the financial motive behind the Watts family murders made you think, I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you believe the financial collapse was the primary trigger for Chris Watts, or was it merely the backdrop for a darker psychological break? Drop your thoughts below. And if you found this analysis helpful in understanding the Watts case, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.